Television, the community television network.
My name is Mike Connolly. I teach a course in modern Irish history and literature at the University of Southern Maine. The history of Portland is made much more interesting by the many waves of immigrants who came into the city, largely between the mid-19th and the early 20th century. One of the more significant of these waves in terms of numbers were the Irish, who came into Portland in particularly large numbers after the potato famine of the mid-19th century. They came specifically from Connemara in the west part of County Galway. This program attempts to preserve the experiences of the last of these immigrants who came into America before the cutoff of large-scale immigration in 1924. We'll be looking at 5 members of this Irish community who range in age between 86 and 98 years old. 3 of these people were Irish-born, the other 2 born in America. All but one of the 5 are fluent Irish speakers. The 5 people that we'll be listening to and looking at today include Nan and Philip Foley of York Street, Stephen Concannon of Grant Street, Patrick O'Malley, formerly of State Street, and Larry Welch of Yarmouth, who was formerly from Munjoy Hill. Some of the areas that these people will be speaking about will include their memories of life in Ireland before they came to America, the use of the Irish language both in Ireland and in America, their trips or their immigration trip to America, memories of work, courtship, and neighborhoods in this city, and finally, the relationship between the first generation and second generation Irish, the so-called greenhorns and corner boys. The Irish poet William Butler Yeats said in his poem, The Municipal Gallery Revisited, "Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say, my glory was that I had such friends." It's been my privilege to know these 5 people, and I hope that you'll enjoy listening and watching them along with me at this time. Philip and Nan Foley of York Street have been married for nearly 68 years. Philippine was born in the Irish-speaking region in County Galway in 1891 and will soon be 98 years old. Nan was born Nan Connolly in Portland, but learned to speak Irish when she lived with her grandmother in County Galway. Here they speak of why Philip left Ireland, how they met and married, and their memories of working and living in the Irish neighborhoods of Portland in the early 20th century. You decide to come over to Portland?
I didn't want to work on the farm.
Was that all that was available for you over there?
Getting up early in the morning.
So you came over here in 1911. What's your first memories of Portland when you arrived?
Oh, well, it was a hot summer. I said I was crazy to leave the old country.
What time of the year was it that you arrived here?
June.
In June.
19th of June.
Was the kind of summer that you weren't used to in Galway?
Oh, no, yes, it was awful hot.
Mm-hmm.
The horses was dying on the street.
Were they?
There was no automobile.
Uh-huh. How long was it before you met Nan?
About 1915, is it? I put up with a lot, son.
Nan, you were born not in Ireland, is that so?
No.
You were born right here in Portland.
Yeah.
And where were you born and raised? What area were you born and raised in Portland?
Right here, down on York Street.
Not too far from where we are now.
No,
So really you've only moved up a couple of blocks.
I didn't go far, did I?
You didn't go far. How many children have the two of you had?
How many children?
Children. 10. And grandchildren?
30.
All over the United States, I suppose.
Yeah, they are really Portland, Oregon, Texas, California, Pennsylvania. Where else? Las Vegas.
What attracted you about Philippine when you first met him?
I really don't know.
Probably he was a good dancer.
He was, I'm sure, a good dancer.
I couldn't dance.
Did he speak mostly Irish back then when you first
Yes,
met
he
him?
did.
Was there any Irish on you? Did you have Irish at the
Oh,
time?
yes, yeah, I learned it very fast when I went over.
Uh-huh. But you were born here and still you learned to speak Irish.
Yeah, I really had no trouble at all. I don't understand why they make such a fuss over it now, because I learned it and picked it up in no time.
What?
I lived with my grandmother, and she couldn't speak English, and I loved her, and I wanted to talk to her, and I think that was why.
Where was she from then?
Oh, she was from Galway,
She
right
was-
there.
In the same general area as Philippines
Yeah,
relatives?
yeah.
And what was your maiden name, your
My
surname?
maiden name, Connolly.
Connolly.
Yeah.
Philippine, when you first came over here in 1911, why did you decide on Portland rather than Boston or New York?
Well, my sisters to see it.
What had they been telling you about Portland?
They want to tell me this. I was crazy to leave home.
They didn't encourage you to come here at all?
No. My brother was out here, and then he went over.
Uh-huh. And what did you do for work when you first arrived in Portland?
I work in the grain elevator.
Down at the Grand Trunk?
On the Grand Trunk, all the English ships used to come in there. They can go to Canada, then you know.
Yes. It was during the winter time mostly, was it?
Oh yeah.
Now that's when the St. Lawrence River was frozen
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and they'd shipped the grain out of Portland.
Yeah,
Now, you worked there for a good few years at the grain elevators.
13 years.
And where did you go from there?
Longshore.
Longshore. Were you a member of the Portland Longshoremen Benevolent Society?
Oh, I know them well, people.
Did you join the union?
Oh yeah,
And so you were a union member.
yeah.
Did you ever know my grandfather Coleman?
Coleman fought.
Coleman Connolly, the Lamb.
Oh yeah.
Did you work with him there on Longshore?
No, I didn't work on I was another gang. He had a gang, you know.
Yes. What kind of a gang did you get into on Longshore?
Oh, what, Mike Jennings.
Was Mike Jennings the gang boss in
Yeah,
the group that
yeah,
you worked
yeah.
in? Where were you living at the time, Philippine?
Right on Spring Street.
On Spring? And how would you describe the neighborhood that you were living in? Were there mostly Yankees, or who was living there at the
Oh,
time?
that was all Irish. Them,
And what parts of Ireland were they from?
Galway, the most of it.
Were they?
Cork, some of them.
Uh-huh. Was there much Irish spoken in the neighborhood?
Oh, yeah. That's all you hear in Longshore then. All Irish working there, you're talking Irish.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, when the First World War came up, you enlisted in the American Army.
Yeah, I was drafted.
You were drafted.
Yeah.
And so you went off to
Well,
fight.
you were enlisted first.
I was, what do you call them, the
The reserves there.
reserves.
Oh, yeah. Nan, did you know Philip at that time? At the time of the First World War, did you already know Philip at that
Oh,
time?
yes.
But you weren't married quite
No.
yet. Did you have a feeling that you should get married before he goes off to fight?
No,
No?
She won't marry me.
She wouldn't marry you.
I was afraid she'd get killed.
And so she made you wait for a few years.
Not much, more a year.
And so you came back then from the First World War, and the two of you were married.
Yeah.
And where was that, at St. Dominic's?
No, take that.
At Sacred Heart Church. So the church for the neighborhood that you were living in, was it the Sacred Heart Church or St. Dominic's?
St. Dominic, I was living.
St. Dominic's. Nan, what do you remember about the Irish coming over into Portland? Did you see a lot of new Irish people coming
Yes,
over
I
at the
did.
time? Was there any reason that they were given for coming over to Portland in such large numbers?
Well, I think it's because there was no work in Ireland. That was, and you know, they really had to. There was no work, and but now they do. You know, they have factories and.
Mm-hmm. So, is there a reason why the people came mostly from Galway? Why, I wonder why the people came from Galway to Portland.
Well, I think, Mike, it's because their relatives were here.
Mm-hmm. Did you get anybody to help you come over, Philip? Did anybody send you any money from America?
My sister sent my passenger over.
Your passage. Do you remember what it was back then? How much it was?
$40.
$40. Nan, how long was Philippine here in Portland before you met him? Was he here just a short while before you met him?
Oh, a few years, I guess.
Yeah. And had your family come from the same area as Philip's family over in Ireland?
My mother did.
Your mother did. So in a sense, you knew a little bit about him and about the area he was from.
Mm-hmm.
When you were courting, did you speak mainly in English or in Irish?
Irish.
In Irish, even though you were American born.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many years have you been married at this point?
67.
67 years. Philip, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the neighborhood that you were living in. Were there Irish living all over Portland at that time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What were the areas that most of the Irish lived in?
All over.
The whole
Oh,
city?
I really think the West End here.
You think that a lot of them congregated here in the West End?
Yeah.
And what parts of Galway did they come from?
All the way back to Connemara.
Yeah, all the way back Connemara and
Cowdermoon, they get to
Spittle and, no.
What's that, Philip?
They used to call from Cowdermoon.
Cornamona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Connemara and Connemona. And what did you call the part of Galway that you came from?
Connemara.
Connemara. Connemara from there till back.
Yes. Did anybody ever talk about Cois Fharraige?
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean, Cois Fharraige?
Well, Cois Fharraige just means by the sea, doesn't it, Steve?
Yes, dear.
You know.
So some people might refer to that. Did you hear of Callawintia?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What would that be in English, I wonder?
I really don't know, Mike.
Yeah. But that was a...
But you know, I never heard about it until I met people here that came from there.
Uh-huh.
House was quite a ways from where I live.
Right. Did you ever think of moving back to Ireland?
Not now.
Not now?
I can't walk there now.
When's the last time that you were both over in Galway?
1970. I was over 1978 when my brother died. I mean, Pa's brother died.
Uh-huh. Was there a lot of differences that you noticed in Galway when you went back
Oh,
over?
yes.
What's the things that changed the most?
Well, the homes and the convenience that I wasn't used to, like the toaster and the washing machine, the refrigerator, those things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the electric sewing machine.
Oh,
and
yes.
things that my mother didn't have and I didn't have, and I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice furniture, and you know that.
Steve Concannon is the subject of an earlier produced hour-long interview entitled Memories of an Irish Immigrant. Steve was born in 1900 in Derrylaughon, which also is in the Irish-speaking region of County Galway. Here, Steve remembers his arrival at Portland's Union Station and tells a few stories of life in this city in the 1920s for a newly arrived Irish immigrant, including his work as a construction laborer and as a longshoreman.
My uncle met me back at the old Union Station here, you know.
So that's how you arrived into Portland, was the Union Station?
Yeah.
What was it like to arrive in Portland and have your uncle there?
Yeah, I was glad, you know. I mean, I noticed, for example, my uncle did not look like my father, you know. My uncle was very witty and very taller than my father, but I was happy, and certainly I would say at that time I had to, you'd be, you know, a new climate, new systems, government. For a time I was suffering from inferiority complex, I will call it. You know, I mean.
What caused that, Steve?
Well, you know, I mean, I knew I had quite a lot to learn, you know, I mean, from the new ways of the way they were evident in this country from my own home, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what I call my uncle had two daughters too. One of them was working the telephone company. One of them was about my age, and the other one was she married. Mother was about 2 years old. So I was, you know, I was bashful. That what I would say. You know, you would be come from the farm. You'd
Sure.
be. So I got over it after a short time. You know. Then I met a lot of the boys that came at the same time. So. And we used to work for you know, work together, you know. I used to work, first job I went to work is for Romano, for Joan and Romano. Well, for Joan and Romano them days, they're the one that built that South Portland High School in 1923, you know. It's a junior high now, but
yes.
It was a beautiful school that time. And I think he did not build, to my knowledge, he didn't build the Deering High School, but the Deering High School was built in 1923 too, the same year.
Did you work on the South Portland High School?
I did.
It's
yeah.
the one called Mahoney now, I think.
Yeah, that's true. But for Joan, who came from Italy, you know, excuse me, Romano, I should say. For Joan, there were two partners, but for Joan was the boss, and he couldn't speak hardly any English, and he couldn't even spell. So them days, of course, you'd get paid on Friday, cash, you know, an envelope, an envelope. There was no danger of anybody robbing you. And he used to call me, when I told him Concannon, he couldn't, I guess, pronounce Concannon, he called me mechanic. So when he used to call out on Friday, mechanic, well, I knew it was my way, my envelope. And we worked with him a while. So one day we were getting 50 cents an hour, and somebody said, you know, that we should ask for 60 cents an hour. This was Michael Beatty, he was working with it. We asked him that we should ask for 60 cents. So we went over to Romano, and he told Romano, the boys, he said, Mr. Romano, he said, wants 60 cents an hour. Well, it took him a long time before he knew what Mike was asking him. At last he thought Mike was asking for his wages, you know, to get through. So he paid him off, and Mike came back to us and he said, you, damn it to heck, he said, with you, he said, I wasn't fighting for you, and all I got out of was I got fired myself. So we quit on account of Mike Beatty. We tried, 9 of us, and poor Romano said he wouldn't hire any of us back anymore, but he had double vision glasses. Some of them went back again, but he never recognized. He never did know the difference.
Steve, tell me the story again about the fellow Michael.
That was in I think that was happened in 1923 over. That's the State Pier was built around that period. That was the time for the bankruptcy took place in Germany. They used to have 3 big boatloads from Germany came that time, you know, and we'd throw them probably a dime or a nickel, and they'll throw you down so many thousand marks, you know. But they went to, I think those Germans went to Ontario up in Canada. But we had most of the work on that time, you know, we were putting in curse stones, setting up curse stones, but most of them was Italians, and we had this Michael with us, and very good-natured, you know, but myself and the other Irish fellow was with me. We used to make him try to tell us about Italy and about the Irish, and he was trying to, we used to get a great fun out of him, you know what I mean, the way he was describing his children, you know, he said he had 6 of the babe, you know, and he started way down, and he kept on until he went higher than himself because his son used to work with us, you know. And, but we used to make him talk, and one day, you know, we used to work at 7 in the morning, and one day Mike came around 8:30, I guess, and the boss asked him, you know, what happened, that he wasn't, and Mike was kind of mad, and he said to me, get up in the morning, he said to me, gas in the head, me sick of the stomach, you know, I guess he meant he had a headache, and me sick of the stomach, and that 2 Irish and best, he called us 2 Irish bastards, that he were the cause of all his trouble the day before, because we made him talk so much, you know. So the boss took him and put him down on State Street. The company was building another place down there, and the following Saturday we had to work all day, and so I saw poor Michael all dressed up in a nice blue suit. I said, Michael, what happened, you know? I said, I went up in a Congress Street, you know, and he couldn't think of Tay Street. He couldn't think of State Street. You know, he said, where a bigger the man, he said, sitting down the shade, no stir at all. He meant Longfellow, you know, the statue, you know, that he meant that no stir at all, it was stationary, you know, like. And from
so
that on.
Yeah, that was his way of saying Longfellow's statue.
Yeah, from that on, well, sometimes we'd make a date with each other and they said, I'll meet you where bigger the man is sitting down the shade, no stir at all, you know. Yeah. It
sounds like you had a good time when you arrived here in
we
Portland.
were, you know, we were happy and we worked, you know. I never really, thank God, I never got sick early. I mean, the climate always agreed with me here. I liked it, you know.
Did you ever think of going back to Ireland, or were you always content to stay here in Portland?
Yeah, I mean, for a visit, yes, I want to go back for a visit, but as far as living over there now, no, I wouldn't, you know. I mean, I'm so used to this place now, I'd prefer it to Ireland, you know.
What was it like back when you arrived? Did you feel at home here after a short while?
I did. I always liked this guy. I always liked Portland. I went to Boston I worked there a short little time, you know, back, you know, in the mills of, back in Shally Birds, they used to call them, Shally Birds paper mills in East Walpole. I worked there in the fall of, I think, in 1923 there, you know, or the early part probably of 1923, but maybe it was the winter of 1923, I should say. And I know, I know I didn't care about Norwood. I mean, there was a lot of Irish there, a lot of Polish, you know, but I came back to Portland, and I always liked Portland, you know.
Why do you think so many Irish came to Portland and Norwood? Well,
one of the reasons for that, Michael, is, for example, if you went to Australia now and you don't know a single person in Australia, naturally you would write to your cousin if you had a cousin there, and so you'll end up wherever your relation is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason. I think that's applicable not only to the Irish here. For example, here they're mostly all from Galway here in Portland, but the Italians do. If you look into them, they came to visit some of their friends too, some relations.
Yeah.
It's relations, you know, because you go into a strange country and you don't know nothing about the custom, not about the country, and naturally you'll have to the first base is to go to a person that is related to you or that is interested in your welfare. And that's the reason I think I came to Poland, because my two uncles was here, you know.
What did you do for work in addition to construction? in the early years when you
Well,
arrived here?
in the summertime, you know, we used to work for the water company, and I worked for the gas company. But in the wintertime, you know, mostly we used to work longshore. That was, of course, when the longshore was booming here for a couple of years at least. 1922, 23, it was very busy down at the, you know, down at the Grand Trunk there. There used to be, in 1922 especially, I would say there was sometimes 16 ships, merchant ships in there, you know, at times. And of course, most of the goods that they were shipping over to England was coming from Canada, and the line of grain, beef, and cheese, and mostly all Canadian stuff that was shipped over from here.
What was it like to be a longshoreman at that time?
Really, I enjoyed it, you know, because to be a longshoreman, you know, for example, you have to be rugged enough and healthy enough to do little lifting, you know. You know, once you are on the job, you are always free to talk, you know. I mean, the boss didn't mean anything to you as long as you did your work there. Let's say you were working, in the old days, they work on a clay boat, and there was 4 big tubs. And each tub had, there was 8 men in the hole, down the hole, and each tub had 2 men. Well, now, as long as you had your tub of clay filled, if you did that, then you were free to talk, as long because the sling came around, you know, and picked up this one that, you know, and came to you. So as long as the boss, that was one of the privileges alongshore, is that they could talk and kid and
Did you talk in Irish or in English to your friends?
In Irish, mostly all in Irish all the time, because all the people you did work with, this practically all spoke Gaelic, you know. I mean, at that time they were from Connemara, from Cois Fharraige, you know, as they call it. But
what other regions of Ireland were people from here in Portland?
Well, I would say, you know, that mostly very few of them came from any part that I know of, with the exception of. There was very few, for example, that came from Roscommon, and it was mostly, let's say, even if they were maybe like girls now, you know, who did domestic work for Yankees back in the Western Prom. Like Mary O'Shea now, she used to, you don't remember, she used to work for Flaherty, the undertaker there. She came from Roscommon. But most of the girls and boys that came, they all came from Galway here and settled down here, you know.
You told me a story one time, Steve, about John Brown, the Irish policeman.
Yeah, I didn't know. Well, you know, I was working for the American Oil, for the Texas Oil Company rather, back in 1930. But there was, you know, there was a lot of Irish American. They were witty and they were, but they used to be kidding about the Irish, you know. But I do not know, you know, if that ever happened, you know. But they said that John Brown, who came from Spittle, he was a big policeman. I remember him in 1921 when I came here. He was a big, husky, very powerful, strong man. And that one July, this Jew was going along. He was selling, you know, selling bananas, I think, and he had a horse coming along, you know, Cumberland Avenue near Oak Street. And it was a very hot day, so the horse got sunstruck and fell down dead. And Brown had to come because he was on the beat, and on that beat, and he came to report the accident. And he asked one of them, "How do you spell Cumberland Avenue?" And the crowd of them said they didn't know. Well, all right, he said, let 3 or 4 of you get a hold of her and pull her over to Wall Street. But that's what they used to tell me, you know. I don't know whether it happened or not, you know.
Pat O'Malley was born around the turn of the century in Cornerone, near Inverin, County Galway. After serving as a member of the East Connemara Brigade of the Irish Republican Army in the Anglo-Irish War, Pat came to Portland in 1924. He joined with many other local Irish speakers already here as a longshoreman and labored for nearly 50 years on the Portland waterfront. Pat died in the summer of 1988 and is truly missed by his family and friends. What were the reasons you decided, it was in the early 1920s that you decided to leave Galway and come to America?
I was in Norwood, Mass for about a couple of years, year and a half. That was a nice place, all Irish.
So you left Ireland in 1920?
1924, 3rd of November 1924, I landed in this country. It's quite a memory. That's a long time ago.
It's a long time, all right. But it's a big memory in your life.
Yeah.
How did you travel over here?
Oh, ship, I forget the name of the ship, you know. We landed from Queenstown.
From Queenstown?
You know, when we landed in Boston, I said, it's a cold country, you know. I went up on deck, I said, gee, I know when Ireland wasn't cold, you know, sometimes, you know, mostly rain, but you know, the weather wasn't even cold, no snow or nothing. I seen snow once in Ireland. That's a lot. I was a kid, didn't go to school, but it was gone the next morning.
And you arrived in Boston then in November?
Yeah, no. Well, I left the 15th of November, 15th November, Queenstown.
Which is cold.
Well, they named that, I don't forget that, they named that, they threw that Queen's name out anyways, and King's.
So that would be Cove now, probably.
Cove, that's what it is, Cove.
And you came into Boston Harbor, that must have been quite a sight.
It was. We come off, my cousin was there, she's still in Jamaica. She was my uncle's daughter.
Jamaica Plain?
Yeah, he was a teacher, he was a national teacher there, you know. She met me there, you know. But I went on the ferry, and the ferry came right, and I said, where the heck is this thing going? You know, boy, you know, I was kind of nervous, but my Steve Concannon's wife was with me too. She came the same year.
Now you went first then from Boston out to Norwood? Yeah.
No, I stayed here about, about a year. I was slow for about 6 months. No job, no money, no nothing. If I'm telling you the truth, if there was a road going to Ireland, I'll try it. It'd be too long, that's a fact. You know, I was people, you know, the woman that run the place, well, they had a family, 2 daughters and a couple of sons. And that time, the contractors wouldn't do any work after Thanksgiving. They closed everything up till next April. I didn't get no job, I did nothing, but I got a job with the same contractor, the man that I stayed with him. I was getting $22 a week, but no unemployment or nothing at that time, you know. I was paying my boarding was $16, you know, 2 boards, $8 a week. So after that, I was straightened out. I said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. I went to Norwood. It wasn't so good. Norwood wasn't so good. Then I worked in the tannery. I worked for the railroad, New York, New Haven Railroad. New York and New Haven Railroad. I stayed there for my sister got bigger to her soul. She got married, so I come down from Norwood here in 1926. And I stayed here ever since. I should go back, you know, but I didn't. I should go back to Norwood. I like Norwood.
You said you would have taken the road back.
I would, I would. I'd try it.
Were you lonely for your friends?
No, I was disgusted, mostly, you know. I would go out, the husband, the person I stayed with, you know, the boarding boss, I mean, he didn't work himself, you know, and no unemployment or nothing. And after Thanksgiving, they do no work, you know, they closed everything up, you know. Well, the daughter and the 2 daughters and the son was working, but still, I used to get, you know, I was kind of, when I used to go to eat, you know, I was, you know, then I'd go out and walk around for a while. And
when you came back to Portland then in 1926, did things turn around for you?
Oh, yes, they were pretty good, yeah.
What did you find for work here?
Oh, I joined the Longshore Union.
Why did you choose that?
Well, well, I couldn't get any other job, you know, but it was, you know, it was paying good money, you know, but the work was kind of scarce, and there was gangs, and it was damn hard to get into them, I'm telling you.
How did it work back then? How did you, first of all, how did you hear that there was possibility of work longshore?
Well, I heard it when I come back from Norwood, you know, there was a fellow there that used to work there. But I joined the union, then I I joined the union, I think it's $26. And
What was the union called back then?
yeah.
Pat?
ILA.
Is this the same as the
Yes.
PLSBS?
Something like that, but it was the ILA.
Mm-hmm.
26. It was only paying 65 cents that time. But I got a job there, you know. Some boss hired me anyways. After that, I was going through the ropes. I knew, you know.
How did they hire?
I was even boss there for 7 or 6 years. You know, after all these troubles.
You were a gang boss?
Yeah, I was a gang boss.
How did they hire people in the mornings to unload the boats?
Oh, you got to go down to the pier. If it was the state pier, they'd call the names.
That was a new pier back then?
Yeah, that was a new pier. That was, yeah.
So how
It
did
was cold docks then, you know. You got to go to them piers to get hired, you know. 8 o'clock in the morning.
What would it be like when you arrived at 8 o'clock? What would happen as far as being hired for a job?
Well, if I wasn't the gang, I might get a job, but if I wasn't, I'd just on spec, you know. They wanted people, they might hire me.
So some days there'd be lots of boats going and other days
Yeah,
not very
yeah.
many.
There used to be a lot of boats coming in there, the Grand Trunk Piers, you know. There's a boat used to come in there from the runabout, I don't know, it was 6 months between, you know. There used to be 4 or 5 gangs there. There was 4 gangs on the clay and the coal docks. But it was pretty hard to get a job if you wasn't in there, believe me, you know. And that's no joke either.
So there were grain ships at the Grand Trunk
Yeah, there was grain ships.
and China clay.
China clay was up the other side of the bridge. There used to be 4 gangs there. That used to come steady. But you couldn't get a job there no more. You get in Washington.
And what about the coal? Where did that come
Oh,
in?
the coal was Long Wharf, Pocahontas. There was a boat in Rides. There was 3 coal docks in Terminal, Portland Terminal. There was once a Lehigh barge, and Randall and McAllister, they had a boat coming coal.
So there were lots of different commodities then
Oh,
in
yes.
Portland at that time.
You had to get hired sometimes, you know, because regardless of whether you'll have to get hired because, you know, there wouldn't be enough for men. So.
What do you remember about the neighborhood that you lived in back then?
Well,
What part of Portland did you live when you came back from Norwood?
I lived on May Street, the people I lived with, 6 May Street.
What was that neighborhood like?
Oh, it was all right, you know, nothing was good. It was good, you know.
Were there other people from Ireland at all?
Oh,
then?
yes, Christ, they were mostly Irish around them places, Salem Street and all them, you know.
So you lived most of the time in the West End of Portland.
The West Indies, right.
And would you describe that as an Irish neighborhood?
Sure it was.
What about the Irish language? Any
Oh,
sign of
they
that
all,
at all?
you know, they all spoke it. I know the people that came from Galway, the majority of them, you know, they spoke Irish.
What parts of Galway did the people come from that you met here in Portland?
Oh, they were come from you know, from where I come from, you know, right, Conarone or Renvern, you know. I knew that people in Ireland. They come out here a long time, and maybe some of them when I was just a kid.
Do you have any relatives that are still living in Ireland now?
No, 3 brothers of mine died a couple of years ago. Just in the same, mostly, well, I had a brother here, he died. I have a sister here, she died. But 3 of my brothers in Ireland died. I was the only, I'm only the lone ranger now.
Did you know of many of the Irish or many of the longshoremen that were living in the East End of Portland?
Oh, yes, Munjoy Hill, that's what I'm about. That's what I did.
And is that the 2 areas of Portland that you would say most of the people were living in?
Well, I know
Munjoy
it
Hill and
was,
the
it
West End?
was. western part in the Munjoy Hill. That was most where the Irish and the longshoremen lived. They mostly lived in Munjoy Hill.
How long were you back in Portland before you met your wife, Mary?
Oh, I don't know. I was about 3 or 4 years. She came from Concannon.
Did she speak Irish at the time, too?
She did. She had to, because I said, you got to speak Irish as you come from Canada. And she got mad. What are you talking about? I said,
Would you say you were looking for an Irish girl to marry in
yeah.
Portland? Did many of your friends marry?
Oh, I used to have dances and everything, you know. They used to have a dance in the Salem Hall, Salem Street. We used to have dance in the Hibernian Hall on Congress Street.
Is that the AOH Hall?
Uh,
The Ancient Order of Hibernians?
yeah.
What were
They
those?
were there then, you know, yeah. But I didn't join. This fellow wanted me to join. I said no. I got joined enough. I said the Longshore Union. This fellow wanted me to join the Knights of Columbus. John Brown, he used to be a big shot at the state. He, oh, I'll get you in. He said, if you want to. I said, let me know. He said, you won't have no trouble getting in, so I never did.
Tell me about one of the dances at the Hibernian Hall. What would it be like?
Oh, it was good, you know, forehand reel, and, you know, there were dances, you know, Hibernian Hall, yeah.
What about the music? What kind of music was there?
There in the Cardine, you know.
Was it a band from outside or a band
No
from...
bands, no bands, just in the Cardine, the fellow, you know, but they were good at it, you know.
Was it somebody right here in Portland that played the accordion?
Yes, I know him, a fellow by the name of Welch. He was a great, Mike Welch.
Uh-huh.
And, he had a brother in Corbin, Ireland, you know, the Irish Constabulary. He was in the service for a while, and he went to New York, and I heard he died. I went to school with him.
Was he a brother of John Brown, the policeman?
No, John Brown was nothing to the policeman.
He was a longshoreman.
Oh yes, he used to boss the Isthmian boats. They used to come to the state pier. They used to discharge, pull, anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I worked on them steady one time with my boss. I got in with him. He was good. A lot of people didn't get hired, but I did.
Mm-hmm. What news from Ireland arrived in Portland in the 1920s? What did you hear from Ireland?
No, I didn't. I used to write for the Connacht Tribune, you know. There wasn't been much in it, you know. Then I used to buy it off a fellow who lived on Exchange Street. You know, then it went up to $1. I said, what? That's too much. I used to get it for 2 pennies, you know. Well, about a nickel, you know.
Were people in Portland interested in what was going on in Ireland at the time?
Oh, I guess, you know, there were. Yeah, it was a tough racket, you know.
Do you remember?
These fellas would come around, you know, the black and tans. They used to go into the public houses and they'll drink what they want, and then they start shooting the bottles and whiskey and everything out. Just like the cowboys.
What do you remember about the work longshore? Would you say that was easy work or tough work?
Oh, it was tough work. It was tough.
What was the hardest job for you?
They used to load sulphur here, you know. They used to send it to the Japs, you know. But they made ammunition out of the damn thing. Start shooting it at them.
In the Second World War?
No, you know, in Pearl Harbor. It was tough.
Your son Vinny told me that you used to use an expression, the Portuguese lift.
Oh yeah.
How would you describe that? What's that like?
That was tough. They'd pull, but we weigh about 300 or 400 pounds to them and lift it up, you know, and put it right, store it right in the ship.
Mm-hmm. How many children did you have with Mary?
4 sons.
4 sons.
And and 6 grandchildren.
And were all your children raised right in the west end of Portland?
Yeah, they went to, yes they did. They went to, none of them is here now. They went to St. Dominic's, they were baptized, confirmed. You know, now one of them is in, fellas in Brunswick, one is in South Portland, one is in Florida, the oldest, and the other fellow is in Buxton. He works for Sears and Roebuck's.
Pat, if you had the chance to change anything now, would you?
Change? No, I don't think I would. I couldn't anyway, you know. It got better anyways, you know.
So your time here in Portland, you think, got better the longer?
Oh, yes, a lot better. Oh, Portland was beautiful that time, walking around the streets, and it was clean as anything. It was nice. You could be out all night, nobody'd bother you. Now you can't go to the store. Somebody might hit you over the head for just half a dollar.
Did you ever think of...
Change for the worse, it didn't change for the better. The way it is now, it's pretty bad right now, you know.
Have you ever been back to Ireland since?
No. Well, I said if I went back, I'd stay there. I wouldn't come out here. Second time, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't care if I'd... I used to work for people in Ireland, you know. This people had a store. I had a good job, you know. Just used to take care of the horses. And a horse in the garden. I used to go to town every 2 weeks to get a load for them, you know. I was pretty good. I was pretty well liked there, you know. They did. People, they didn't, you know. They were not poor, you know. He had a big couple of houses and store and everything. And he was out here about the old man that I worked for. And about 5 years. And I still wonder when I come out here, how the hell did he make that money in 5 years? He must have picked it up on the street or somewhere. I worked for 30 cents an hour shoveling snow. And you wouldn't get 40 cents until you were 6 months there.
Did any of your boys ever go back to Ireland, Pat?
Oh, this guy went back twice.
Does it please you to know that they want to go back and see what it's like there?
I had 2 granddaughters over in France. One of them went back to Ireland. My daughter-in-law over there took her around. She had a car. Well, her husband died. He was a school teacher, an Irish teacher, you know. She went back there. She took her around and everything. They had a car. She had a car there, you know.
If we get any work longshore, Pat, are you ready to come back and start working again?
No, I can't walk right now. No, I ain't coming back to work.
Larry Welch and his wife Ethel live in Yarmouth, Maine. Larry was born in Portland in 1902, the son of Joe Welch of Lettermullen and Mary Loftus of Half Mace near Carna, County Galway. Both his parents were native Irish speakers. In this interview, Larry remembers growing up in the Irish neighborhoods around Munjoy Hill, and he makes an interesting comparison between the first-generation Irish and the second-generation, or native-borns, as he calls them. Larry, what are among the earliest memories that you have of growing up in Portland? You were born in Portland, not in Ireland, isn't that so?
That's right. Well, the earliest playing around the brewery yard, of course. Playing out in the sand. I was pretty young.
What's the brewery yard?
Well, that was a yard up on 4th Street, almost before you get to Promenade, Eastern Promenade, where they had 5 brick houses built on this big lot that used to be a brewery there. I guess they call it the brewery yard, which was before my time, the name.
Had you ever heard who the people were that owned the brewery or ran the brewery?
Never heard a word about it. We just accepted brewery yard, that's all.
You told me a while ago about a memory you had of smoking tobacco for the first time. Chewing tobacco.
Eating it, not chewing it, eating it. A little piece from my Uncle Larry's coat that I was snooping around. I was only a little kid. I was about 3 years old, probably, something like that. I seen them chewing it, so I thought they ate it, I suppose.
What happened to you?
Well, last I remember, there was a pile of sand. They were paving the sidewalk down, you know, where the 4th Street curves before it starts up over the hill.
Yeah, the Portland Company.
Yeah, the Portland Company there. There was a pile of sand where they were going to put the bricks in. I just laid there, and the last I remember. Somebody must have brought me home, I don't know.
So it knocked you for a loop then?
Just put me to sleep. I don't know if I'm getting sick. Maybe I threw up too, I don't know. But I lost my memory at that time.
What part of Ireland did your people come from?
Galway, Connemara. My father come from the town of Half Mace, he said. My mother come from Dinish, or what's that? Little Mullen. Little Mullen? I used to call it Little Mullen, but I guess it's Little Mullen. Huh?
So Dinish on Lettermullen,
Something like
and Half Mace, which is out by Carna.
yeah.
So both of those places are in the Gaeltacht, the Irish-speaking area. Did your
That's right.
did your people speak Irish?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. But they both could speak English too. But there was a lot of Gaelic spoken in the house, especially on Sundays when the servant girls, the greenhorns they called them. My father was quite a guy, I think. He brought out a lot of them. They called bringing them out. He furnished the fare, and they paid them back, and they all went to work as servant girls. And Sunday afternoon was a head off, I guess. They used to come down to our house. That was a big day. They'd send me up to the bakery to get cake, and of course they'd have tea and cake all afternoon. Quite a gathering there.
How was it, Larry, that your dad decided to send over for the greenhorns?
Well, that was done in those days. That's how the good many of them come out. They were probably all relatives, you know. It was the custom. One helped the other.
Was he doing well enough financially to send
Well,
money?
they'd all pay him back, you know. And I don't suppose there'd be too many at once. But he was making good money, you know. He was wheeling on the coal by the ton like your grandfather worked at. They were the elite of the longshoremen, made the most. They worked by the ton. They worked there like hell, you know, to make that money wheeling. So I guess for that spell he was making good money.
You had to take a guess. How many people would you say he helped to come over to America from Galway?
Well, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't have any idea. I just know what they told me, that he helped them. And they all come down to our house. It was like an open house there on Sundays. Quite a lot. The house was always full Sunday afternoon.
What would it be
Young
like?
Irish girls, and they'd be gabbing away in Gaelic. I mean, of course, I was a little kid. I was in on the cake and everything. And, I couldn't mind. Of course, they made a lot of me. I was the little baby to them.
Was there any more than just conversation there on Sunday afternoons?
Like what we call a kitchen. They used to have what they call kitchen shindigs, shindig, in some place. But there was no music or anything in our house, and I'm just talking to you, laughing, joking. Everybody seemed happy, as far as I know. I never had anything disagreeable.
What parts of Portland did you live in? The earliest memory is up on 4th Street by Munjoy Hill.
I lived there until I graduated from grammar school, and then we moved up to Montgomery Street. We got a place with electric light. We didn't even have electric lights in that house. Then had kerosene lamps. Old stove heat. Of course, up Montgomery Street was stove heat too, but it was a step up. My father was against that, but my sisters.
So
We
you
lived on Montgomery Street quite a while until the end of World War I. and they broke up for some reason. My father and his sisters all moved away, and the whole family. And I went and roomed out, had them out. They broke up housekeeping, they called it in those days.
But you always stayed in the east end of Portland, up toward Munjoy Hill. What's the reason for that, do you think?
Well, inertia, I guess. We just started there. That's where you knew people. That's where the work was, longshore, down Grand Trunk Docks, State Pier. And a good many of the Connemara, we call them, lived up that section, I guess.
Would you describe that as an Irish neighborhood?
One section of it, yeah. All that, over down below us, we call Dog Alley, Freeman Land, it started the Italian section. And on 4 and Newbury Street was the Italian section. And up above Adams Street and Kellogg, and them were a good many Irish, mostly Irish.
Did the ethnic groups get along well together in Portland?
More or less. Didn't mix too much. I mean, I got along all right. We played with mostly Italian kids. And mostly Italian kids down there.
What about longshore work? Did the ethnic groups mix very well?
No, there was very few. But Irish, and you had to be Irish practically, I guess. There was 2 Polish Polacks, we call them. There was no Italian. There was one Italian they called the Kaiser finally, but before that it was all Irish. Mostly when I went down there was Irish from the old side, very few natives. And then after I was in, there's more and more natives because the other Irish were dying out or getting old or something.
So the native ones would have been second generation Irish Americans mostly.
But I think as a class, as a union people, the Irish from the old sod were a hell of a long ways ahead of the natives that were here. When they gradually got up and took over the union, they weren't too good union in it, a lot.
Did something go out of the union when the second generation took it over?
Work was dying out.
TV4, Extraordinary Television, the Community Television Network.